Good evening. I'm Sister Sonia Sanchez. I'd like to read for you, This Is Not a Small Voice. This poem came about when I was in a conversation with a journalist who had called me for an interview, and she remarked, "Isn't it odd, these kinds of strange names that African-American children are being given today?" And I replied, "I think they're quite beautiful. They are polysyllabic names, very much indicative that these are probably children of African descent also too." And one of the other things about this poem that I'm going to read is that recently, this month, Sister Valerie Coleman, a great composer, and Sister Angel Blue, a great singer, also performed this in New York City at the Met. So I want to give them a shout out and say thank you so very much for that. This is not a small voice you hear. This is a large voice coming out of these cities. This is the voice of Latanya, Khadijah, Shaniqua. This is the voice of Antoine, Daryl, Shaquille, running over waters, navigating the hallways of our schools, spilling out on the corners of our cities, and no epitaphs spill out of their river mouths. This is not a small love you hear. This is a large love, a passion for kissing learning on its face. This is a love that crowns the feet with hands, that nourishes, conceives, feels the water sails, mends the children, folds them inside our history where they toast more than the flesh, where they suck the bones of the alphabet and spit out closed vowels. This is a love colored with iron and lace. This is a love initial black genius. This is not a small voice you hear.
Please welcome our host for this evening, Seth Meyers.
I am so honored and delighted to be with you tonight. I'm always so happy to be in a room full of writers. I love writers. I love being in their company. But I got to be honest, I leapt at the opportunity to be here tonight because I knew there would also be poets here. Make some noise if you're a poet. Yeah. A group of poets, also known as a verse of poets. It's a verse of poets and a coffee stain of writers. I love being around poets because, let's be honest, I don't think there's a pure profession than a poet. I mean, the only reason to be a poet is passion. I hope if you're a poet, that is not an insulting thing to hear. I don't think anybody gets into poetry for the money. I don't think anybody is in college like, I'm going to go make that Emily Dickinson money. Nobody walks out to Chelsea Piers, sees a bunch of yachts and thinks, must be poetry week. Nobody gets into it the way they choose finance. It's like, yeah, I was undecided, my major, and then I just wandered at the job fair. I just wandered over to the poetry booth. I also love writers, you guys. For a long time, many years, been a sketch writer, been a joke writer. As of last week, though, I am also a published children's book author. Thank you. Not only that, but my book, I'm Not Scared, You're Scared, landed on the New York Times bestseller list. Was it number one on the bestseller list? I think I would have said if it was. Top 3, though, and you know what that means, wasn't number 2. But there are no sour grapes here. There really aren't. I'm very happy with number 3. And in fact, to show there are no sour grapes, I would like to congratulate Adam Wallace and Andy Elkerton, who were number 1 on the list with How to Catch a Leprechaun. I would also like to congratulate number 2 on the list, Adam Wallace and Andy Elkerton, with How to Catch the Easter Bunny. Doesn't seem fair that they made the list twice. Still very happy for them. And I would definitely read their book, How to Catch Us on the New York Times bestseller list. The bigger burn, by the way, and this is true, my mom, who really taught me the value of reading. She taught me the honor of being a writer, and she's been following very closely how my book is doing, which is very sweet. It's very wonderful to have a mother like that. And she was checking a certain website, and she told me a couple weeks ago that I was the number 8 top-selling rabbit book. And then she listed the 7 rabbit books that were ahead of me, and one of them was Goodnight Moon. What a fucking kick in the teeth. You slave over a manuscript for a kid. You get a top illustrator. I did a ton of book press, and I'm looking up at Margaret Wise Brown's 1947 Goodnight Moon. What is with that book? Do you think she knew when she wrote it what a hit she had on her hand? What's your next book going to be about, Margaret? I'm going to introduce a bunch of stuff, and then I'm going to say goodnight to it. See you on the bestseller list in 2022. It's a wonderful book that I hate. Not because it's a better-selling rabbit book than mine, just that my kids like it so much. And I know it's a very short book. I think you could read the whole thing in 2 minutes. When my kids say, can we read Goodnight Moon? I'm like, can we just do War and Peace instead? The nice thing about writing a children's book is when people tell you they've read it, you believe them. I think if you wrote a novel and somebody said to you, I started your book, that would be, you'd be flattered. When you write a kid's book with pictures that's 40 pages, if someone only said, I started it, you'd be very disappointed. It's fun to do book press. I really enjoyed that part of it. I got to get interviewed by my favorite interviewer, Terry Gross. I did Fresh Air. And the great thing about doing Fresh Air is for a whole week afterwards, a certain kind of person comes up to tell you they really enjoyed listening to you on Fresh Air. And you can tell as they're approaching exactly what they're coming to say. You can tell by the free tote bag what they're coming to say. And they're great because they're so quiet, you have to lean in to get the compliment. They're like, I loved you on Terry Gross. The only other show I do where I'm a guest that I get that kind of feedback is when I do Howard Stern. And for a week after, I also have people telling me they liked me on it. Totally different group of people. Cops, construction workers. Nobody ever leaned out of the side of a truck and yelled down to me, loved you on Terry Gross! You guys, the pandemic was terrible for a lot of reasons, but it was, let's be honest, it was great for reading. It was a great 2 years for reading. I think all of us valued writers more than ever over these last years. Give it up for writers. Give it up for what they provided for us in this incredibly lonely time. I would ask how, the pandemic was for all of you personally, but considering it meant people stayed at home and didn't socialize with others, I'm guessing you were fine. I'm guessing asking a writer how they did during the pandemic is a little bit like asking a cat. It was weird. I just, sat around, never went out. We have some great honorees tonight. How wonderful was that poem, by the way? Wish it would have been in person, but beautifully shot, beautifully delivered. 2 of tonight's honorees have actually been guests on my show, Viet Thanh Nguyen and James Patterson. I love having authors as guests on my show because they know how to tell a story. I know that goes without saying, but they know how to tell a story. A lot of actors, no offense to actors, don't. So writers know how to be succinct, be brief. I know there might be some editors here who think that's not the case, but I'm comparing them to actors. So James Patterson has a new book with Dolly Parton, which is a New York Times #1 bestseller. Not surprising when you consider they don't have to compete those Leprechaun and Easter Bunny books. You all probably knew that James and Dolly wrote a book together. What you didn't know is they also recorded a country music album together, which is not selling well. I'm not saying James Patterson books are ubiquitous, but I have one, the new one on my bedside table. I didn't buy it. Just showed up there. You guys, I also want to extend a warm welcome to the audience at home joining us online via live stream tonight. It is great to be together with you in the virtual world who also love books. Thank you so much. Give it up for everybody watching at home so they know that we care about them as well. It is now my pleasure to introduce this evening's Gala chair, the President, CEO, and Chairman of ReaderLink, Dennis Aboud.
Thank you, Seth. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. It's so exciting to be here with you in person to celebrate the strength and endurance of books in the literary community, and especially the creative contributions of writers. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to the many friends of poets and writers who are joining us from afar, tuning in to the event online. We wish you were here, but we're glad that you're able to join us virtually. I've been a supporter of poets and writers for many years, so it's been my pleasure to serve as this year's Gala chair, and I'm thrilled to tell you that together we've raised more than $960,000. I'm grateful to my colleagues at ReaderLink, the Poets and Writers Board of Directors, and to all who've helped make this evening a success. I'd especially like to acknowledge those companies who joined ReaderLink as leaders in this effort, starting with the other premier underwriter of this event, Penguin Random House. Thanks also to our underwriters, Apple Books, Audible, Barnes & Noble, Book of the Month, Hachette Book Group, HarperCollins Publishers, Macmillan Publishers, and Meta. My gratitude extends to every company and individual who contributed to the success of this evening. The money raised tonight will help fuel Poets and Writers' essential programs for writers. As you'll hear this evening, Poets and Writers has had an immeasurable impact on our industry, encouraging and inspiring writers and helping them turn their voice and vision into the books we love. As a reader whose life has been enriched by so many books, it's wonderful to find an organization that helps to encourage and nurture authors. By supporting Poets and Writers, we're able to give back some of the tremendous value that reading has given us, and know that young writers whose works we'll enjoy in the years ahead have a place to seek support, information, and encouragement. The values held by Poets and Writers align well with the values held by ReaderLink. As both a publisher and the nation's largest book distributor, our mission is to improve our communities through advancing literacy and promote reading for education and entertainment. I can think of no better partner to help us fulfill this mission than Poets and Writers. Since its founding, Poets and Writers has made its programs and services available to writers for free. They've worked to break down barriers and provide access to information so that writers of all backgrounds can make their voices heard. Poets and Writers reaches over 100,000 readers with its magazine, supports 2,000 literary events each year, and draws over 1.5 million annual visitors to its website, which is a treasure trove of priceless information for writers. Its brand is based on integrity, trustworthiness, and accessibility for all. Those of us in the publishing ecosystem know that so much of what we do depends ultimately on the creative work of writers, the artists who use language to hold a mirror up to our times. For that reason, on behalf of ReaderLink, I'm happy to be here and welcome an opportunity to celebrate writers and to support an organization that is fully dedicated to writers. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of Poets and Writers, Melissa Gradle.
Hi, isn't this great? Dennis, thank you so much. ReaderLink has been a generous supporter of Poets and Writers for years, but you really outdid yourselves this time. We're incredibly grateful to you for your leadership tonight. I know this is a crowd that appreciates a good acknowledgments page, so please think of me as that. I thank you, everyone who contributed this evening. Poets and Writers' work is not possible without your support. I would like to thank the Poets and Writers Board of Directors for their invaluable support, guidance, and enthusiasm. Would the board members please stand so that we can acknowledge you? Yay! Yay! Thank you. And I would now like to shout out my colleagues at Poets and Writers. Did you know that there are only 22 of us? 22 people work at Poets and Writers, and let me tell you, they are 22 brilliant, dedicated, hardworking people. Please stand so that we can acknowledge you. Thank you. I am so proud to work with you. Before I introduce this evening's literary table hosts, I'd like to reflect for just a minute on what an extraordinary occasion this is. As many of you know, 2020 was Poets and Writers' 50th anniversary year. Naturally, we had planned an extra big celebration, which included honoring Oprah Winfrey with the Leadership Award, as well as presenting the Writers for Writers Award to the wonderful novelist Michael Chabon, and also to a completely unknown, very young poet called Amanda Gorman. The event was planned for March 16th, 2020. On March 13th, New York City shut down. We had also cleverly timed the release of a book, The Poets and Writers' Complete Guide to Being a Writer, to coincide with that event. But of course, none of us could have imagined what the next 2 years would be like, how much we would lose, how ready we would be to celebrate. And a month ago, few of us could have imagined that as the pandemic waned, a dangerous new war would break out in our already war-torn world, awakening a level of existential fear that many of us thought was over with the Cold War. We live in a perilous time. Like many people, I'm looking all sorts of places for solace, and I find it mostly by remembering that what we are experiencing, while terrible, is actually not unprecedented. People have lived through perilous times before: plagues, tyrants, wars, disasters, famine, oppression, disenfranchisement, dispossession, slavery, genocide. People before us and all around us have endured and survived, and we know something of what they endured and what they lost and how they survived, primarily because someone wrote about it. In these perilous times, we need writers. We need people who are looking carefully, honestly, with compassion, without blinking, to describe what it is like to be alive now. So in these perilous times, I consider it a great privilege to lead an organization whose mission is to serve writers. You'll hear a little bit more about our programs later on, but let me just say here that what we do is we work to democratize access to information about how to get published, how to reach readers, how to make a life as a writer. We want to make that road broad and well-lit and inviting because we know the value that writers offer to us and to the people of the future who will want to know how we survived and what we celebrated. Tonight, we're gathered in celebration of writers. So it is now my pleasure to introduce to you the distinguished authors who are this year's literary table hosts. I would like to ask each writer to please stand when your name is called and to remain standing until I've recognized all of you. Dear friends, there are 60 table hosts. Please hold your applause until the end. Starting on this end of the room, Ore Agbaj Williams, Beth Morgan, Yelena Akhtirskaya, Lee Stewart, Anna Quinlan, Marlon James, Christina Baker Klein, Joshua Ferris, Jennifer Egan, Viet Thanh Nguyen, Jason Reynolds, Siri Hustvedt, Adam Hazlitt, Monica Yoon, Kate Russo, Idra Novi, Abigail Rosewood, Crystal Hannah Kim, John Kenny, Richard Russo, Christina Alger, Mira Jacob, Waiki Wang, Megan Abbott, Jamie Attenberg, Fran Castan, Joseph O. Legaspi, Roxana Robinson, Kathy Park Hong, Leslie Jameson, Mega Majumdar, Cornelius Eady, Stephen Rowley, Ruman Alam, Chris Pavoni, Sochi Gonzalez, Robert Ruland, Brigitte Davis, Emo Walsh, Nana Kwame Ajay Brenya, Vijay Shashadri, Steve Almond, Helen Phillips, Rigoberto Gonzalez, Courtney Mom, Major Jackson, Delia Owens, Kamiko Hahn, Alejandro Barea, Sam Lipsight, and Dolene Perkins Valdez. Please acknowledge these wonderful writers. Thank you very much. Enjoy your dinner.
Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin.
The books you love, the ideas that have changed you, the characters that are your soul's companions, the poems you have by heart. It all begins in the imagination of a writer. Getting the words onto the page can be a lonely pursuit, but getting those pages out into the world, well, that takes a village. And that's where Poets and Writers comes in. For generations, writers have turned to poets and writers for validation, information, and connection. Validation and encouragement make creativity blossom. Access to reliable information is key to success, and connection is where community begins. Writers look to the award-winning Poets and Writers magazine for trustworthy guidance, insight, and news. With over 100,000 readers, Poets and Writers magazine is the leading publication of its kind, and beloved by writers everywhere. Online, 1.5 million writers a year visit pw.org to read articles and interviews, and to search our suite of online databases. Whether looking for writing contest deadlines, literary magazines, independent presses, or agents, writers search our carefully vetted listings with confidence and for free. Because it's our mission to ensure that all writers have access to the information they need. More than 10,000 published writers have applied and been accepted to the Poets and Writers Directory, a career milestone many authors celebrate. Poets and Writers Groups is where writers go to find other writers, and we make it possible for writers to find their people and build the community they need. Our Readings and Workshops program pays writers for giving readings and leading writing workshops in big cities and small towns across the country. This year, we'll award $235,000 directly to writers, supporting an average of 5 literary events every day. During the pandemic, we've helped writers connect online too. We offer workshops to demystify the publishing process, provide access to agents and editors, and help writers plan for success. We were proud to partner with the City of New York to help distribute $15 million in pandemic relief funds to New York City-based artists, including scores of writers. The Maureen Egan Writers Exchange Award helps emerging writers build a network for professional advancement. And the Jackson Poetry Prize recognizes excellence in American poetry. In print and online, virtually and in person, Poets and Writers helps writers connect and thrive.
How are we doing, everybody? Yeah! You know, I failed to mention the illustrator of my #3 best-selling book, Rob Sayek Jr. That was not an oversight. I didn't mention him on purpose. This is Poets and Writers. This is not about illustrators tonight. And if he at the Illustrators and Painters Gala doesn't want to mention me, that's fine. If it was different, I would acknowledge the incredible work he did, and I would say that I could not have done it without Rob, but that's not what tonight is. So he will go unmentioned. Since 1970, Poets and Writers has been known as a reliable place for serious writers to find support. The list of authors who have attributed some portion of their success to Poets and Writers is jaw-dropping. If you have not yet made a financial contribution tonight, and if you're in a position to be able to do that, please pull out your phone and text PW Gala to 44321. That goes for the audience at home, too. I am told the first 50 people to respond with a contribution of $100 or more will receive a complimentary copy of the Poets and Writers Complete Guide to Being a Writer. This doorstop of a book right here. There you go. This is an invaluable roadmap for building life as a writer. I haven't read it, and yet, if I had, maybe the Leprechaun guys would be looking up at me. Friends and book lovers, we have reached that portion of the program where we will recognize the recipients of this year's Barnes & Noble Writers for Writers Awards. The Barnes & Noble Writers for Writers Awards are bestowed by Poets and Writers to celebrate authors who have given generously to other writers or to the broader literary community. The award is named for Barnes & Noble booksellers in appreciation of its long-standing sponsorship of Poets and Writers. Each of this year's awardees has made a commitment to expanding the range of voices that is published and recognized as part of our national discourse, as well as to supporting literacy, bookstores, and the presence of literature and communities across the country. Our first honoree is Sonia Sanchez, the great poet who spoke to us at the start of the program this evening. Poet, playwright, essayist, and scholar, Sanchez is the author of more than 20 books, including, I might add, children's books, and has been the recipient of many awards, including the 2018 Wallace Stevens Award, the 2021 Dorothy and Lillian Gish Prize, and the 2022 Edward McDowell Medal, which she will receive this summer, a leading figure in the Black arts movement. She has had a profound influence on American literature, creating with her contemporaries space for Black voices to be heard, and inspiring and encouraging younger writers ever since. As an academic, Sanchez was a pioneer in the field of Black studies and a beloved educator, teaching at Temple University for over 20 years and lecturing at more than 500 colleges and universities worldwide. She has also been a tireless advocate for peace and justice, including as a member of the formidable Granny Peace Brigade. Her generous, in-kind, and material contributions to other writers and to the literary community are immeasurable in scope and span more than half a century. Ms. Sanchez really wanted to be with us this evening, but she is 87 years old, and her family prevailed upon her to stay home rather than party maskless with 600 friends. Not just 600 friends, 600 filthy writers. In the waning days of pandemic, so instead, she was kind enough to send this video message.
Good evening to you, and good evening to my fellow awardees. Brother Patterson, Brother Wynn, Sister Sally. I taught in academia for 45 years, my brothers and my sisters. The joy of teaching poetry and lit, observing my students as the beauty Ideas of a poem, story, essay, play caressed their hearts, hands, eyes, and they moved in the new arena of precision and intellect and love. Sister Toni Morrison said, "We die. That may be the meaning of life, but we do language. That may be the measure of our lives, and what an honor and a joy to do this thing called language, the measure of our lives, and to stand our words up and let them minuet our blood, the blood of our children, our students, to open up the sorcery of language, spitting teeth on the wonder of words, recapturing the wings of our most sacred vows." So tonight, as we honor our sisters and our brothers with these awards, we honor the national memory of a people, of a country, men and women who have helped to shape the spirit, voice, beauty, pain, joy, history of our country, of a world dominated by racism, slavery, homophobia, greed, assassinations, poverty, old wars, and new wars. So when you honor us, you remember our ancestors, our sons and daughters, aunts and uncles, cousins, playmothers, our mothers and fathers, our sane and insane ones, our sedity ones, our outsiders, our poor ones, our women and men ordained with wild noise and humanity, our men and women quivering with gold in their eyes. And when you honor us, you remember the precision of our writers sewing themselves into the sleeves of history and history. They all combine to teach us finally the lessons of our blood, and we are one, alive, apart from the elasticity of the dead. Thank you.
Our next honoree is Viet Thanh Nguyen, the acclaimed author of The Sympathizer, for which he won the Pulitzer Prize and its sequel, The Committed. Viet is a professor at the University of Southern California and the recipient of a MacArthur Genius Award. He is also a co-founder and supporter of the Diasporic Vietnamese Artists Network, which sponsors and promotes Vietnamese artists and writers. He created the blog Diacritics to share news about Vietnamese diasporic arts and to provide a publishing platform for Vietnamese writers, expanding the range of literary voices documenting our times. I had the pleasure of interviewing Viet on my show a few years ago, and he really lorded that genius grant over me. You remember, Viet, that was pretty much all of the interview. You kept saying, you know you're talking to a genius. It is my honor now. You know what I will say, The Sympathizers are just such a fantastic book. And I have to say, it's really important to see yourself represented in literature. And I think, Viet, you do that for a community that hasn't been represented in literature as much. It's equally important to see other people represented in literature, which is what such a gift that book did for me. And I think that, as we talk about the world we're living in right now, that's where we learn empathy, when we see characters that aren't us in the pages of literature. And we have writers who treat them with such joy and care that it makes you feel for them as well. So I'm gratitude to you, and it is now my honor to present him the Barnes & Noble Writers for Writers Award. Viet. Awkward. Here, now we got to do all the awards.
Thank you. Wow. Thanks so much for that introduction, Seth. It's fabulous. I do, in fact, remember calling myself a genius on your show. But now, of course, you are ranked far higher than I ever will be on the New York Times bestseller list. Hello, everybody. It is so amazing to be here among poets and writers and people who love poets and writers. I never thought when I started my writing career that one day I would end up here. And that's probably because I started my writing career when I was 8 years old. I was in the 3rd grade when I wrote and drew my first book, Lester the Cat. Lester was an urban cat stricken with ennui. Bored with city life, he fled to the countryside. There, in a hay-strewn barn, he found love with a country cat. Unexpectedly, the San Jose Public Library gave me a book award. It was my first taste of literary fame. I never thought of being a writer before Lester the Cat, so I'm forever grateful to the San Jose Public Library for encouraging me. And setting me on the path to over 30 years of misery trying to become a writer. The success of Lester the Cat was an anomaly. Much more typical of my writing career was my first creative writing workshop at UC Berkeley with Maxine on Kingston. Every day I would come into the class of 14 students, sit next to Maxine, and fall asleep. Maxine gave me a B+, which may not seem that bad, except a B+ is an Asian F. She wrote me a note and said, "You seem to be quite alienated. You should make use of Berkeley's excellent counseling services." Obviously, I never made use of those counseling services. I became a writer instead. But I never forgot how Maxine, in her landmark 1976 book, The Woman Warrior, did something unusual. At the beginning, she addresses Chinese Americans. Chinese Americans. When you try to understand what things in you are Chinese, how do you separate what is peculiar to childhood, to poverty, insanities, one family, from what is Chinese? These lines in this question very much apply to me. I too wanted to write books that spoke first and foremost to Vietnamese Americans. Everyone else could listen in. Perhaps this strategy is the reason why my first novel was rejected by 13 out of 14 publishers. As one editor put it in his rejection, he just had too much trouble crawling all the way inside the voice. And yet when the novel was eventually published by my beloved press, Grove Press, a major review called me a voice for the voiceless. And my reaction to that was, have you ever been to a Vietnamese restaurant? Visited a Vietnamese household? Hung out with any Vietnamese people? We're really, really loud. As Arundhati Roy puts it, there's really no such thing as the voiceless. They're only the deliberately silenced and the preferably unheard. What does it mean then for someone like me, or people like me, so-called minorities, to find our voice when we are told that our voice is heard so much more clearly against the voicelessness of those others who are just like us? Those who want to hear a voice for the voiceless may actually be just as invested in not hearing the cacophony and the chorus of those they assume to be voiceless. It's easier to crawl inside one voice. This is why I reject the notion of writers as only being solitary artists whose task it is to find his or her or their voice. Of course, much of the writer's work is solitary. I've spent thousands of hours alone facing a screen, but always present with me were the voices of all those Vietnamese people I knew, beginning with my mother and father. Always there for me were the voices of Maxine Hong Kingston and the Asian American writers who had come before me, beginning in the late 19th century, who faced a level of incomprehension I can barely imagine. Always with me were the voices of all the Asian American activists and other activists of color whose political and social movements broached the walls of racism and indifference and gave me the opportunity to speak and to be heard. Instead of accepting the duality in which the so-called minority writer ventriloquizes the voiceless as their voice, I believe in two things. First, we all indeed have to find our own voices. But second, we must abolish the conditions of voicelessness. That's what I'm fighting for when I'm writing and when I try to support other writers. For Asian Americans, even claiming an individual voice is fraught, for our place in this country is to be the silent, acquiescent, apologetic model minority. We are neither expected to write nor to fight. We're not expected to speak alone, much less speak together. And yet in the face of the anti-Asian violence that is perpetual in American society, routine in American warfare in Asia, and which has resurged during the pandemic, finding and claiming both our individual and collective voices is crucial. And here, what is powerful about literature and storytelling and the movements of activists and artists is that they can teach us not only how to be alone, but also how to stand together. Thank you very much for this honor.
The third recipient of the Barnes & Noble Writers for Writers Award is James Patterson, the author of over 200 books, the most recent of which is Run, Rose, Run, a collaboration with Dolly Parton. His enduring fictional characters and series include Alex Cross, The Women's Murder Club, Michael Bennett, Maximum Ride, Middle School, and Ali Cross, along with such acclaimed works of narrative fiction as Walk in My Combat Boots, ER Nurses, and his autobiography, James Patterson by James Patterson. For his prodigious imagination and championship of literacy in America, Patterson was awarded the 2019 National Humanities Medal. The National Book Foundation presented him with the Literarian Award for outstanding service to the American literary community, and he is also the recipient of an Edgar Award and 9 Emmy Awards. Patterson's books have sold over 400 million copies, and he's also donated more than 1 million books and tens of millions of dollars to causes you care about: literacy, libraries, bookstores, education, and writers. Unfortunately, Mr. Patterson was among those who, in conscientiously complying with the COVID-19 protocols of this event, got an unhappy surprise. It's a twist. Classic Patterson. He's very sorry not to be here, but he's doing fine and sent a recorded message which we'd like to share with you. But first, a special congratulations from a friend of his.
Hello, everybody. It's Dolly here. I'm a friend of James Patterson's. James, what are you doing off trying to win an award without me? That's not fair. Anyway, I want to say that I'm happy to be with you tonight via camera, and I think you're winning, what, the Writers for Writers Award? Well, how perfect is that? Every writer loves you. I'm a writer, not as good as you, but I think that's a prestigious award, and maybe I'll get that someday. If not, I certainly think you're deserving of it. So anyhow, just know that no matter what else, I will always love you. No, I'm not going to try to hit that Whitney note.
Hi, I'm Stephen King. Well, not really. I have COVID, mild symptoms, and that's for real. Thank you, Dolly Parton. As always, she's the best. I love Dolly. Dolly loves me. Our collaboration on Run, Rose, Run has been a sweet, sweet moment for both of us. Collaboration can be a beautiful thing, and I'll kind of leave it at that. So anyway, the other night, I'm leaving a restaurant with my wife, Sue. A man at a table on our way out starts pointing at me. He says, I know you. I recognize you right away. You sold me my BMW. So I stand, or actually sit before you tonight, Stephen King, used car salesman. Briefly, I'll try to explain Sue and my support of literacy, bookstores, teachers, buskers, feral cats. I checked in with our family accountant this week. Apparently, Sue and I have given away over $130 million to help support teachers, bookstores, libraries, books to schools, kids, and troops overseas, feed the feral cats. So I said to our accountant, my God, why didn't you stop us? What were we thinking? Just kidding. Sort of, mostly kidding. But what were we thinking? Part of the answer is that growing up in Newburgh, New York, I was exposed over and over again to lessons about giving back. My dad grew up in the Newburgh poorhouse, the Pogey. My mother taught in a Catholic school for peanuts. And yet, over and over again, my mother and father gave away the shirts off their backs, sometimes literally. The other reason for my gifting, I'm a writer. I'm one of you. I know, that's a shocker for some. But I was a starving writer in New York. I dreamed for a decade about being published. Here's an illustrative story. When I was 19, I stopped at a clam shack in Ipswich, Massachusetts. I spotted John Updike sitting there. He was eating steamers. I had just finished Rabbit Redux. I wanted to write a rabbit novel. So I watched Updike eating clams and drinking iced tea. Just watched. It was wonderful. I've never forgotten it. Here's some bad news. I just finished my autobiography, James Patterson by James Patterson. This just keeps getting worse, doesn't it? Have I no shame? Little Brown is publishing my ego biography in June. Don't blame Michael Peach. He didn't have a choice. Somebody at Little Brown came up with the line, his best story is the story of his life. Stories like, I was at Woodstock, got muddy, got wet, got 8 miles high. I once watched Norman Mailer and James Baldwin square off to fight. I swear to God, it was unbelievable. I was an usher, along with my friend Robert Mapplethorpe, at the Fillmore East. I met James Taylor and Robert Lowell at a Massachusetts mental hospital. Recently, Dolly Parton sang happy birthday to me over the phone. Even more recently, she got 6,000 people to sing happy birthday to me in Austin, Texas. That's probably where I got COVID. When I first came to New York City, I rented a disgusting room in the Washington Jefferson Hotel on West 51st Street. I believe it's still there. The room had wallpaper with thousands and thousands of pentagons in the design. Some past occupant of the room, maybe a first novelist, maybe a first poet, had penciled an X into every single pentagon in the wallpaper. I started my first novel, The Thomas Berriman Number, in that bizarre hotel room fit for the Saatchi Gallery. The novel, The Thomas Berriman Number, was turned down by 31 publishers. It went on to win an Edgar Award. I was 27. I had so much promise back then. What the hell happened to me? Back in those days, I wanted to write the kind of novel that was read and reread so many times that the binding broke and the book literally fell apart, pages scattering in the wind. I'm still working on that one. But that is what keeps me going. I hope the next book or the book after that will be my best. I really do. It keeps me going. I don't work for a living. I play for a living. Fast forward after the Edgar Awards. I've just seen that the first Alex Cross novel, Along Came a Spider, is number 6 on the New York Times bestseller list. I don't think that could be a mistake, but I'm a little afraid it might be. I walk into the Barnes & Noble that used to be on the corner of 67th Street. I go to the fiction section. A woman has just picked up a copy of Along Came a Spider. I stop walking. I watch her. The woman reads the flap copy. Then she puts Along Came a Spider under her arm. I'm trying to be cool, but I want to go over and hug this woman. I watch this wonderful, wonderful person walk down the aisle. And then she slides Along Came a Spider into her hobo bag. She stole the book. And all I can think is, does that count as a sale? Last story. During the summers when I was a little kid in Newburgh, once a week, my grandfather, Pop, would take me on his frozen food delivery route. I was 9 or 10. Pop and I would be up at 4 in the morning, packing his truck with frozen peas and those awful Mrs. Paul's fish sticks. Before 5, we'd be on our way. Every morning, my grandfather would head over the Storm King Mountain toward West Point, and he'd be singing at the top of his lungs. His absolutely terrible, terrible voice thundering against my ears. And he told me this. Jimmy said, when you grow up, if you grow up, I don't care if you become a truck driver like me, or a famous surgeon, or the President of the United States. Stranger things have happened, Pop. Just remember that when you go over the mountain to work in the morning, you've got to be singing. And I do. I hope the same for all of you, you writers and poets, you. Thank you.
This is very cool. All 31 publishers who turned down James's first book are here tonight. And as I read your name, I would like you to leave. It's my pleasure now to introduce Stephen Raleigh, who will present the Editor's Award. Raleigh is the best-selling author of Lily and the Octopus, The Editor, and The Guncle. Please give a warm welcome to Stephen Raleigh.
Good evening. Sally Kim has worked with a lot of authors in a career spanning more than 25 years, many of whom more famous and more celebrated than I am. Her books have been the finalist for some of the industry's most prestigious awards, the Pulitzer Prize, the National Book Award, the Thurber Prize for American Humor. I, myself, am a 2-time People Magazine Pick of the Week. I'm certain any of her esteemed authors would gladly be up here in my place tonight to introduce Sally, but none of them wrote a book entitled The Editor, which Sally edited about the relationship between a young writer and his very alluring book editor. All due respect to them, Christina, Kate, John, Neil, that was a failure of vision on your part. It's a years-long commitment to sucking up that leads one to a podium like the one I'm standing behind tonight. It was a long con, but it worked. Sally found me after I had published my first novel, Lily and the Octopus, about a young man grieving the impending loss of his dog after he imagines a small octopus has affixed itself to the dog's head. I was adrift at the time and received conflicting advice about what to publish next. Just as my first novel was deeply personal, I had written it after my dog had passed away from a brain tumor. My new manuscript, The Editor, was inspired by my early experience in publishing. Sally took a chance on me and became my champion right out of the gate, and I'm not always an easy sell. I can hear her pitching the higher-ups at Putnam. You know, it's by that guy who wrote the Octopus book, the one that's like a cross between Joan Didion's Year of Magical Thinking and Moby Dick. But somehow Sally made that pitch work. The Editor's eponymous book editor is the one and only Jacqueline Onassis, who had her own extraordinary 15-year career as a book editor. In my novel, Mrs. Onassis puts a young writer at ease by fixing him a daiquiri. On my first visit to the Putnam offices, remember offices? Sally had Putnam president Ivan Held fix us both daiquiris. That was a baller move. For sales conference that year, she went all out, wearing oversized sunglasses and costume pearls. She stopped just short of blowing her hair out in Jackie's signature lampshade. She went above and beyond for me, using her great reach to help collect stories from those who had worked with Mrs. Onassis personally to help complete my research. Mrs. Onassis was known to carry a poets and writers tote bag, in fact, and I'm working on securing one for Sally tonight, but I still think she should try the bouffant. When I had turned in my final draft, it so happened that my brother came to visit me where I live in Palm Springs with his 2 young boys, ages 3 and 5. I don't have children of my own, so I was wholly unprepared when my brother was called back to the East Coast on a work emergency and left me with his boys, ages 3 and 5. I was an understudy thrust into the lead role. Sally watched from a distance as I flailed, posting desperate Instagram pictures, bribing them with candy for breakfast, elaborate pool floats, and taking them to the zoo. I didn't even know we had a zoo. She called the following Monday to say, "I think there's something to write about there." What can I say? Sally likes her writer's writing. But she was right. My deep love for my nieces and nephews, coupled with my longtime fascination with Auntie Mame, led to my funniest and most successful novel to date, The Guncle. Now, writing comedy in novel format doesn't have the best return on investment. Because it takes years to write a book, and publishing is a long lead industry, you can come up with a great joke and then realize it could be years before anybody laughs. And, oh, by the way, you're not going to be in the room when they do. I say this for Seth Meyers because it's already crowded on the adult fiction New York Times list, and we don't need any more competition. So I would write my jokes for an audience of 1, for Sally, because I could hear her laugh and I could picture her smile. I wrote lessons from this gay uncle to his young niece and nephew, teaching them all the most important things. Bottomless mimosas are not the same thing as pantless mimosas. You don't want to cross your gay uncle because you can't spell nemesis without me, sis. That sort of thing. I think Sally learned a lot along the way, too. It's an exciting time to work in publishing. The doors are open for more diverse voices than ever, but it takes visionary editors with great open hearts to usher them in. We live in a divisive and challenging times. Too many are demonized for the color of their skin, for whom they love, for striving to want a better life for themselves and their families. And progress is slow and painfully incremental and plagued with periods of backslide. But when things do get better, and they do, it's because we are allowed to tell our stories. It's much harder to deny someone their humanity when you have witnessed their pain, learned their history, heard their voice, or laughed with them over a joke. I'm forever grateful that Sally has allowed me to be a storyteller. It is the great honor of my life. And I am but one of the many voices that she's raised. So without further delay, please give a warm hand for the 2022 recipient of the Poets and Writers Editor Award, my own Jackie O, my personal charming Auntie Mame, Sally Kim.
You should hold this
Okay.
photo.
Thank you, Stephen. If I were half the writer you are, I'd be much more eloquent about what that speech meant to me. We'll talk later. Hi, everyone. It's such an honor to be on this stage with such accomplished authors. And I have to say, it's so incredible to be in a room full of so many friendly and familiar faces, especially after all this time. Usually when I'm asked to speak, it's to celebrate an author in a book I love. It turns out it's much harder to try to encapsulate what the last 27 years of my life as an editor has been. Every time I sat down to write this speech, in fact, my thoughts kept going back to a random conversation I had with my father many years ago. I was having a particularly tough time at work, so I was complaining to him. And I should be very careful right now because a lot of my former publishers are in this room. He listened, and then he chuckled in that quiet way of his, and he said, "Sally, you're not supposed to like your job. You have to keep going." So here's a little bit about my dad. He grew up during war and occupation in Korea, And when this country opened up its immigration doors, he landed at the University of Kansas, of all places, in 1969, with $60 in his pocket. He never told us directly about the hardships and the racism he experienced. Those things I gleaned in the in-between spaces of his funny stories about 13 foreign students sharing a one-bedroom apartment, eating and sleeping in shifts because there wasn't enough space. Because why dwell on those things? He felt so lucky, just so lucky to be here at all. After studying architecture, he moved to LA and he went to look for his first job. He rode the public bus around the city, armed only with a map and the newspaper want ads. And he finally did get his first job at a firm called Orbit Industries, but only after he showed up 3 days in a row, even though they kept turning him away. They let him take a draftsman's test, which he aced, and they hired him on the spot. And to celebrate, he walked down the street to a local diner, and he treated himself to a precious Coca-Cola. I'm sorry. This is all to say that to my dad, work was something to be endured. So my path to publishing was anything but charmed, and truly those are stories for another speech. But suffice it to say, I had my own version of my dad's bus rides around the city. There was no one really like me in publishing back then, especially editorial. My background and my perspectives weren't exactly considered assets. I felt lucky just to be here. So I took it upon myself to quiet my voice. I concentrated instead on those dualities of being a good editor, being introverted enough where you could wrestle with the manuscript for hours on end, extroverted enough so that you could be that ultimate champion for that manuscript. But now I know that it takes much more than those things to be a good editor. I don't need to underline what a tough time it's been for all of us these past few years, but particularly as the national conversation opened up much deeper wounds and much needed reconciliations, I know a lot of us wondered what our roles were, how we could affect change. We marched, we donated, we reached out, and we listened. And then I realized, maybe for the first time, that the work we do, our everyday work, is our way of affecting change. We work through these challenges by doing the things that we are best skilled to do, which is to find new voices and amplify them. Publish books that reflect a part of ourselves and so many others back into the world. Luck is success or failure based on chance and not as a result of your own actions. By saying I'm lucky just to have a seat at the table frees me from any responsibility for what to do with that seat. In order to amplify the voices of others, I know that I have to amplify my own. Otherwise, it would be a disservice to all the wonderful books and all the wonderful writers I've been fortunate enough to work with. And it would be a disservice to my father and his bus rides around the city, to his enduring all those things, so that one day his daughter too could endure, to keep going, and have a job that she not only likes, but loves. And slowly, bird by bird, book by book, it turns out that I didn't quiet my voice at all. We lost my father exactly a year ago, and I know that he would have loved to have been in this room with us tonight. So I'm really, really grateful for everyone to be here and to celebrate. I want to thank poets and writers for this absolute honor and for all the important work that you do. I know this is called the Editor's Award, but everyone knows that an editor is only as good as the publishing teams that work alongside her and sweat all the details. So that's art, production, publicity, marketing, subrights, sales, everyone. Thank you to the Putnam team, particularly Alexis Welby, Ashley McClay, Ivan Held, Allison Dobson. And to my mentors, Susan Moldow, who's back there somewhere, from whom I learned something every single day. And most certainly, Madeline McIntosh. And of course, my brilliant authors, some of whom are here tonight and who came as far away as London. Special thank yous to my family who came from California, and especially my mom, my #1 cheerleader, who reads every single book I publish, even the scary ones. And to my children who often get a little bit neglected because there's always a manuscript to tend to, but who turned out pretty terrific anyway. I actually practiced this speech in front of them, and they said it was important that I tell you their names. So, thank you, Olive and Harry. One more. And to my patient husband, who 25 years ago sold all of his earthly belongings, packed 2 duffel bags to move across the country with me, because he believed I could long before I did. And he only sometimes complains still about the hundreds of books and tote bags that crowd our lives. Thank you all.
One more time for Sally, everyone. And a final round of applause as well for Sonia Sanchez, Viet Tan Nguyen, James Patterson. Thank you to the folks at home who have tuned in online, and a special thanks to everyone who's made a donation. Your generous contributions keep writers informed, inspired, and writing. I brought up my drink this time. I've been keeping it hidden because I know writers famously frown on liquor. All of us who are readers are the ultimate beneficiaries tonight. If you have not made a financial contribution to Poets and Writers this evening, you can still do so. Please text PW Gala to 44321. It has been, excuse me. You know, I cut a joke, you guys, and you know, I feel like now's the time to tell it. It's a bad joke. But Stephen, you know, he inspired me because he said sometimes you write a joke and people don't laugh at it for years. This might be one of those. I haven't read James Patterson and Dolly Parton's new book, so I don't know who the killer is. But I keep an eye on the Jolene character. It's been my pleasure to be your host this evening. Now I invite you to join me in the next room for dessert and coffee. On your way out, you'll be getting books, including mine. But also go out and buy it, guys. We can do this. We can get to #1. Thank you for supporting Poets and Writers. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.